This is music, this is sparkling water, and this is another episode of Songs from the Pukebox. Hello there, welcome to another episode of Songs from the Pukebox. It's just a What's Spinning series. Terrible title, stupid pun, we know the story, let's move on. So in these videos, I share with you some of the music I've listened to over the last week or so. This time I have actually a good stack of CDs and a vinyl. So let's get down to business. Let's start with the vinyl first. So, I was inspired by Thor's Music Hammer, who did a review of Crystal Knight's self-titled album. So I decided, yeah, I'm gonna spin that. It's pretty good. It is pretty good. It's fairly standard, 80s metal. Some of the songs are a bit keyboard heavy, and some of them are not. You got some pretty cool riffs in most of the songs, and I think it's a pretty good album. Now it's rare. So if you come across a copy and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, I suggest that you pick it up. If you like 80s metal, of course. There's some really good songs on, and there's some, more mediocre songs. There are no bad songs on here, so it's definitely worth it if you find it, and it's not too expensive. It was reissued. Was it on Diabolic Might? I don't remember, but it was reissued. And the reissue is also quite rare because they didn't press that many copies either. But yeah, traditional metal, very good stuff. A bit keyboard heavy in places, but I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it too. So there you go. Awesome cover artwork as well. So that was the one vinyl. Let's turn to the CDs. Up first, we have Apex Predator Easy Meat by Napalm Death. Grindcore, there are lots of Napalm Death isms on here for sure. You got the blast beats, and you got the thing that they do very well where they go from just all out blast beats to some mid-tempo, more mush friendly stuff. There's a lot of that going on here. But what's really interesting is that, and I think it's an influence from the Swans, because Barney has mentioned a couple of times that he's very inspired by the Swans. So you have quite a lot of kind of like baritone chanting on here in the intro track, for example. But I think this is a very good Napalm Death album, and it's a bit experimental as well, which I appreciate. So if you don't mind some kind of experimental grindcore, there you go. Up next, here we have a thrash metal classic. It's The Years of Decay. Fantastic songs on here. I love this album in particular. Maybe not surprising. Elimination. I think maybe Playing with Spiders and Skull Crusher. That one is perhaps a bit too long. But apart from that, I think this is a great album. Now, Elimination, a classic. I've heard people trash talk it though, because Bobby Blitz, he hits some, high-pitched notes. I don't see the problem, but whatever. A thrash metal classic. I love the way that the bass tone and the guitar tone, they work so well together on most Overkill albums, this one included. Up next, Pestilence Doctrine. So this is a more recent Pestilence effort. This is also kind of experimental. It's not as experimental as Spheres was. You have a very heavy guitar tone. I love the bass work on here. The songs they're kind of interesting. For the most part, they consist of riffs that are kind of short, and then they're repeated a lot until they switch into another riff. But I realized that if you go back through the Pestilence catalog and listen to their songs, even from back when they did almost like thrash metal, it's a similar approach, just less technical and stuff. But the vocals are almost like tortured. They're not really growls. They're like tortured moans almost, in a way. or they're harsh vocals, but they sound tortured and desperate, and that quite fits this music. So this is a very interesting Pestilence effort, crushingly heavy. It has the kind of elements of the Spheres kind of experimentation approach, but not as experimental. And you have some really awesome jazz, rock, weird guitar solos on here. Very good stuff. From Pestilence to Queen, A Day at the Races. By the way, I just picked these randomly from my CD collection, so there's no rhyme or reason. This one is not as, shall we say, it's not as much in the limelight as Night at the Opera, but this one has some pretty cool songs on here. Of course, there's Tie Your Mother Down. That's a bit of a hit. And there's Somebody to Love. That's another hit too. I think my favorite track on here, however, that is the song called White Man. And the deep cuts are really interesting on this one. So, it's a Queen album. Lots of diversity. Fantastic vocal performance by Freddie Mercury, and fantastic, guitar work. So there you go. From Queen to Rage Against the Machine, Evil Empire. I think this is a great album. A lot of people trash it, and they say it sounds too much like the debut album. It does sound a lot like the debut album, but I don't think that's a problem. People of the Sun, the opening track, is an awesome, funky, song, and then it's followed by Bulls and Parade, which is quite heavy, also kind of funky and groovy. Revolver is great as well. I like the songs on here. I don't like it as much as the debut, but I think this has to do more with reasons of nostalgia and stuff, because it's just as good, like, objectively speaking. If you can even speak objectively about music, you probably can't, but I like this for sure. Up next, Slaughter Command, and it's called Ride the Tornado. Fast, filthy, dirty, but not too lo-fi thrash metal. I think that's the best way to describe this. Good fun, it's not a super long album, so if you need an energy kick and you don't have a whole lot of time, this is actually perfect for that. So Slaughter Command, straight up maybe a little, I guess you can call it blackened thrash if you buy into the whole blackened thrash thing. To me, it's more like kind of raw thrash metal, but very good stuff, very enjoyable. Up next, 13 by Suicidal Tendencies. I think this is a pretty good album, but it doesn't hold up, I think, to the classics. But you have some pretty good songs on here. A lot of diversity too. You got some funk metal. You got almost like hard rock. There's a little bit of crossover thrash. Some alternative, metal going on as well. Quite good stuff. If you want to check out a more recent Suicidal Tendencies album, this one is as good as any, to be honest. It's a good listen, but it's not like your classics. I don't think anybody expected it to be like that. But, I like listening to this every now and then. Up next, compilation, Watchtower, Demonstrations in Chaos. So it's kind of a mixed bag of songs from some of the albums. And I think there's some demos and some earlier tracks. And as far as I remember, some live stuff on here too. If you like progressive technical thrash metal with a very audible bass, the bass is almost like the mantelpiece of this music. Check this out. The vocals are insane, high-pitched, soaring vocals. So if you can't stomach that, this is not your cup of tea. But if you like progressive music and you don't mind a challenging listen, check this out. I would recommend picking up their albums and then maybe, picking this one up a bit later. So there you go. Up next, a thrash metal classic, or another thrash metal classic, The New Order by Testament. So many fantastic songs on here. awesome riffs, fantastic guitar work. The vocals are amazing. The production is garbage in my opinion. To be perfectly honest, it suffers a lot from the production, but not too much. Normally it takes a couple of songs for my ears to get used to it. So what don't I like about the production? I don't like the guitar tone. The guitar tone is actually great for the palm muted thrash metal riffs, but for everything else the guitar tone is too thin in my opinion. And the drums are, I mean, the drumming is great, but the drums don't sound very good. They're actually very bad. They are the worst part of the production, to be perfectly honest. I like the bass tone though. The bass kind of benefits from the guitars and the drums sounding like garbage in my opinion. But it doesn't make it unlistenable, I will have to say. I mean, it's a fantastic thrash metal album. And maybe you like the production. Some people like it. It's a bit too much of the sort of 80s metal production in my opinion, but a fantastic thrash metal album. Into the Pit, right? That's a classic. Disciples of the Watch is an amazing song. I actually quite like Nobody's Fault and A Day of Reckoning as well. So, a fantastic thrash metal classic. It suffers a little bit from the production, to be honest. And up last, Vangelis, the soundtrack from Blade Runner. This is for the most part electronic music, like 80s synth music. And it's really awesome to just have on in the background. It creates a nice just atmosphere. I was listening to this while I was just chilling and playing a game called Terra Nil, which is kind of a Zen ecosystem restoration game, and it was actually perfect for that. So this is class 80s synth soundtrack. So there you go. So yeah, a pretty good week of listening in my opinion. Musically, all of this stuff was good. Like I said, I think the Testament one suffers from the production, but I don't think I'm the only person in the world who thinks that. Thanks for watching.